Welcome to Microcollege. My name is Jacob Hunt, and I'm the director of Thoreau College, a microcollege located in Viroqua, Wisconsin, not too far from the Mississippi River. We are recording this in early May of 2024. If you are curious about Thoreau College, please check out our website. We are currently accepting applications for a couple of programs, including a new Shakespeare intensive program, which will be happening in the months of June, leading up to our third annual Shakespeare Festival, the last weekend in June. And we are also accepting applications for our fall and spring Metamorphosis gap semester programs. So, and please do check out the podcast. There are many other programs all over the world that were featured there. This week, we are really excited to be welcoming a couple of guests speaking to us all the way from Switzerland, from the Goetheanum. One of them is Nathaniel Williams, who is a returning guest, one of our earliest podcast guests from the Microcollege podcast. And we're also joined by Andrea de la Cruz, who is, both Nathaniel and Andrea are working with the Goetheanum, which we'll talk about in depth here. Andrea was born in 1989 in Madrid, Spain. Andrea has been working with young people and adult education in international settings since 2011. She coordinates the Studies and Further Education Department of the General Anthroposophical section at the Goetheanum in Switzerland, where she develops educational activities based on basic anthroposophy together with the faculty team. In 2015, she took part in the Goetheanum's anthroposophical studies as a student, which marked a turning point in her life as she encountered the works of Rudolf Steiner. She then joined the youth section and worked as a youth researcher and facilitator of informal experiential learning programs in 2017 to 2022. Andrea holds 2 Bachelor of Arts degrees in community theater and drama and theater arts from Edinburgh and London, and has a Waldorf teacher certification and is currently completing her master's in pedagogical innovation. Nathaniel Williams is from the United States, originally from the state of Alabama. He studied visual art and marionette theater in Switzerland and graduating with a certificate in visual art from the Neue Kunstschule in 2002, and he also has a PhD in political science from the University of Albany. Along the way, he co-founded Free Columbia, an anthroposophical-based art school located in Philmont in the Hudson Valley of upstate New York. Since 2023, he's been back in Switzerland, where he's taken up a new role as the leader of the youth section of the Goetheanum. Thank you so much for joining us, both of you.
Thank you, Jacob. Good to be here.
Thanks so much. Yes.
I think it's been a while since Nathaniel has been on the podcast. So I would like to ask about your biography as well again, so people may have not heard the first one. But let's start with Andrea. Here on the Microcollege podcast, we always begin with people's biographies, especially asking, where were you 18 to 21 years old? Who were you with? What were you doing? And what stands out as the pivotal experiences of that period?
What a wonderful question. I love it because it was such a wonderful time in my life, I have to say. It gives me a lot of pleasure and good memories to think of this time. And I was in Edinburgh, as you said before, from my biography. I studied there. I moved there quite young, actually, when I was 15, so it was 2005. And I moved there to actually finish my high school studies, so to complete high school, to learn English, to experience a different culture. And the idea was always that I would return to Spain, but I loved it so much that I stayed, and I actually never went back to my home country. So when I look back at being 18, 21, I remember this experience of being totally immersed in a culture that was not the culture I was born in. So adapting fully and truly, not only through the language, but also through the relationships that I formed then through school and then later college and university. Just becoming one with a culture that was not naturally given to me. And so this multiculturalism, this capacity of tuning into something foreign was for me a huge part of my early adulthood, I would say. And then in terms of my studies and what I was spending my time on, theater was at the time what I'd chosen professionally and academically. And not because I wanted to become an actor, I never wanted to necessarily work on the stage, but I was fascinated by this human capacity and need, I would say, of telling stories, imagining scenarios, and doing it with others, actually, and next to others, and through language, through exploration, through observation of relationships. But most of all, I think I was interested in how the arts could be a sort of way or path, or sometimes it gets called a tool, no, to achieve something else. I don't know if I like tool as a word. I think I prefer a way or a path, to discover what it means to be human and how we can better relate with each other. So I was spending a lot of time also with political questions. That was kind of the phase where I was most political. Now I would say that kind of takes a secondary sort of space in my life. But yeah, I engaged with questions of community, deciding to go into community theater as my specialization at university, and forming relationships with people from all over the world, I would say, in a beautiful city that Edinburgh is.
Beautiful. Yes, an immersion in a new culture, a new place is a common theme that emerges from these stories. I've been asking people this question kind of weekly or more often for a couple of years now, and that's a really common one. And I think, and there at a place like the Goetheanum, it seems like that's also a really remarkable place for people to experience that. This sense of community at a global level is part of the mission of where you're at. So, do you want to?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you say just a little bit more? Theater is a growing part of our programs here at Thoreau College. As you hear, we're doing this Shakespeare intensive, and more performing arts in general are incorporated into our programs alongside folk arts and visual arts and farming and all kinds of other things. But can you talk a little bit about about the role of theater in a process of education for young adults and of also formation of community, as you were saying? It's a path of initiation in its own right, in a big way.
Absolutely. I would say that in theater, in plays where we can really explore this human being in becoming, which is one of the running themes or the central themes to anthroposophy, I would say. And this quality of being in becoming out of a constitutive situation of each individual. No, all of us are in process. We are not yet finished, so we are playing constantly in this exercise of play, discovering new faculties, new facets of who we are. But it's not possible to do it if we are not in connection to others. Simply that this I beingness, this I that I am, can only be so because of the I don't know if to call it mirroring quality or the dialogical quality of community life or social life, no? And to what I think is magical about theater is this element of play, of really playing, and that means it can have so many wonderful meanings. I think is the possibility of researching through enjoyment, through fun, in a free way, in a completely committed way, I would say as well. This is also what's magical for me, that once you commit to the play element, then you're really, truly, and fully in also a research mode. You are absolutely surrendering to that which you are doing. And when is it that we can so explicitly devote ourselves to something or someone else, as we do when children play, when we play as adults? No, so I really find that it's a magical space to meet in, socially speaking. And this quality as well, that in theater or through acting, through role playing, all these kind of possible exercises that we do there, we are really kind of polishing ourselves as instruments for something else to come through us, something that is not there yet, but that we are working together as a community to enable to be. So it really is a path for future creation, I would say.
Amazing, beautiful. Yes, the spirit of play is something I think programs, microcolleges, gap year programs, programs for young adults, we can create that environment even for a few minutes a day. We've done something I think really, really powerful because play, whether it's in the woods or on the stage or in the studio of some kind or just at a meal, it's a precious experience. So wonderful. Yes, and Nathaniel, you know a bit about play in different forms. Um, Welcome back to the podcast. Maybe you could briefly take us back to that time period, 18 to 21 years old, where you were, and yeah, what stands out from that period as important.
Yeah, great to be here again, Jacob, and thank you for the invitation. I when I think back to that, I'm kind of interested. Did you ask me this question on the first time that
Yeah.
we had I have to go back and listen again. I'm going to try to be brief, if anyone's heard the same thing. But at 18, actually, I have an unusual educational biography. I was homeschooled until I was about 10. So I didn't actually go to a school until I was about 10. And then I was in a variety of schools between 10 and like 17. And then I was just so unhappy in school. I was in a school in Huntsville, Alabama. It was a public school called Grissom. It was near the NASA kind of Space Institute center down there that Huntsville's famous for. And I was just so unhappy. And I convinced my father to allow me to homeschool once again. And he just made me promise that I could do it without him teaching me anything. And so I had to just, work through textbooks and then he could see if I was learning or not. But that was fine with me. I'd much rather do that than go to school. And so I did. And I was playing a lot of music in a musical group. And then I ended up, I was really interested in spiritual philosophy. And I had come into contact with Rudolf Steiner's work. And I read The Philosophy of Freedom when I was 19 all the way through for the first time, which is one of his books, which is really a amazing book. And it was so inspiring to me that I just got a one-way ticket to Europe and came to the Goetheanum and asked if I could study philosophy here, which I couldn't. They didn't have any philosophy. They had like a kind of like what we have now, which Andrea and I are working with, which is a more general foundation year. But I ended up just staying here and having a really unusual kind of college experience over here in Europe for about 4 years. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and that involved puppetry, and what else? It brought a lot together.
Yeah, well, I did a full-time studio arts program in painting and drawing. So that was the really where I focused the most. But I also worked with a brilliant puppeteer by the name of Thomas G. Meyer for a year. And he introduced me to the mysteries of puppets, which is very difficult to talk about. And you have to see it, but once I got connected to that, it never let me go. Yeah. When I went back to the United States, I was still playing with dolls, as they say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, so we've mentioned throughout this introductory section here the Goetheanum, which the audience for the podcast has grown steadily through the couple years we've been doing it. And it's very global, and there's definitely people who will listen to this who have never heard of Rudolf Steiner, anthroposophy, and certainly the Goetheanum. So if you're just hearing that word for the first time, this is a name based on Goethe, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, Goethe, the Goetheanum. And yeah, it's several things. It is a beautiful building, which I had the pleasure of visiting a couple years ago for the first time in Dornach, Switzerland, near Basel. But it's also a collection of schools and workshops and studios and an organization. kind of the forefront of the movement of anthroposophy, which is the movement growing out of the work of Rudolf Steiner. So you both are working there at the Goetheanum. Maybe you could start at the beginning and explain what is the Goetheanum, building on what I just said.
It's not an easy question. It's so wonderfully complex that is one could really do an entire series of podcasts on this amazing institution. Nathaniel, do you want to start or should I go ahead?
You could go ahead. I'd be happy to follow if you'd like to begin, Andrea.
Okay. What is the Goetheanum? So actually we are currently celebrating our 100th birthday in a way, because the Goetheanum as it stands here today as the seat of the Anthroposophical Society and the School of Spiritual Science was grounded in 1924. So it's a special year for us. It's in a way, it's a milestone in the biography, I would say. And I would just in a very simple and open manner, I would say that it's an educational and or a research and learning institution that is cosmopolitan, that is open to the world, to different to diversity in the sense of in all the senses of the word, actually. But I would say that it's a place where many different streams of thought, of praxis, professional backgrounds, directions can meet to pose questions, to pose even research endeavors that maybe just maybe in other institutions today they are not so easily taken up. Questions that maybe are sometimes seen as controversial, or that they don't receive an open space to be put on or questioned, so to say. And we work, we are grounded on anthroposophy and anthroposophical conception of the human being, and we can of course talk about what that is. But I would say that maybe what's most beautiful, what excites me about being at the Goetheanum, is that it's an institution that, yes, was 100 years ago, but we are still in the process of building up and constructing. So it's not something that is ready and its identity is fully determined and defined by the last 100 years, nor even by the indications that were given for its foundation by Rudolf Steiner in 1923-24. So it's an institution that is really, or should be really, in dialogue with the times we are living in, with the genuine questions and longings of our culture today, and that it should work for cultural transformation through all disciplines. So we are blessed with 12 different faculties or sections, as we call them here, that work on totally different academic and professional fields, from agriculture, medicine, pedagogy, sciences, all the arts, visual arts, performing arts, and so on. And all of these come together in a way to attempt at making a contribution for the furthering and betterment, of society and culture today. Maybe that's a start.
That's a great start. Nathaniel, you want to add to that?
I just find it such I love the challenge. Also, I'm so nice that you're from the United States. I don't know how many of the listeners are, where people are from or what their native tongue is, but I think that one of the translations that I think can shed light on something essential about the Goetheanum is, in German, it's the Freie Hochschule für Geisteswissenschaft. And I think if you were to translate that freely in the best sense, meaning so that it expresses the meaning, which is present in the German, you would say it's an independent college for contemplative knowledge practices or something like that. So, and it is, that is the kind of ambitious, founding reality of the Goetheanum, is that it was a group of people that were really mostly inspired by the magnificent work of Rudolf Steiner, who had pioneered these contemplative research methods that his grandeur, I think, is only going to become more and more known around the world as the decades pass. Even now, if you look how well he's known now compared to 40 years ago because of his impact in so many fields, I think it's just going to grow. But the Goetheanum, I think, in some ways can be understood much better today than it could 100 years ago when it was founded. Because, like, if you look at Brown University, there's a contemplative studies program, for the last 40 or 50 years, especially through some of the cultural, spiritual impulses that young people primarily worked for in their colleges. They wanted their lecturers to have something poetic about them and not just be objective information. They wanted a full human education, and now you see that generation kind of, they worked, and many of them started these contemplative studies programs. You have at least openings and a general openness to the possibility of new ways of gaining knowledge that involves meditation and contemplative practice. And without a doubt, this is the central characteristic of the Goetheanum as an independent university for contemplative practice, and of all the practical work in Waldorf education, but also by dynamic agriculture and the things that are really well known all over the world. So the Goetheanum is kind of the picture on the earth for all the people who are working with that. It's not just people who are here. The Goetheanum is a school that is all around the world.
That's
People
right.
who have a kind of community of practice, a community of research questions, a community of interests. But we do have the Goetheanum here. So that's it.
Yeah, it's a home. It's a home for that
Yeah,
old school to
that's
meet,
right.
to talk to whenever they feel the need, and even when they are not here, in a way, the Goetheanum is there where they are, and this is a really, really beautiful and inspiring picture for, I think, all of us who are connected to it, not just those that work here.
Yes. Yes, I think that the question of terminology is something that we wrestle with all the time to describe what we're doing. And it does seem that in the several different languages, there's a struggle to find the right word. And you can see college, university, Hochschule, Microcollege, and these are terms, none of which quite capture what's emerging here, even though there's a really strongly felt sense of an urgent need and something really powerful. And the Danish folk high schools, Folkhøjskole, is also that word higher school, Hochschule, is capturing several things that are confusing, especially to English speakers. Nathaniel, your story about, like you, I came out of adolescence really inspired by Rudolf Steiner, out of the experience of starting a high school here and reading some basic works of anthroposophy. And I too had the idea of, like, gosh, there's a university or a college somewhere where this can be it. And of course, it looked up the Goetheanum, and really, it wasn't exactly that, right? There wasn't you couldn't go and enroll and take classes exactly in the way that I hoped, and so it took a while to get back there. But nevertheless, one of the things that we, before we get to, I think we want to go deeper into what is anthroposophy and what does it have for our time. But before we get too deeply into this hour, I wanted to ask you specifically, what can a young person or a person of any age who hears this and says, gosh, I want to go more deeply into this, what opportunities for actual classes, courses, education are being offered now at the Goetheanum in Dornach?
Shall I start? Great. So at the moment, well, like Nathaniel said earlier, actually, there are many different possibilities to come to the Goetheanum and undertake some kind of educational experience here. So we have conferences, seminars, study weeks, all kinds of activities that are usually provided by the different sections specialized, or faculties specialized on different fields. But then we have a department, this is the department where Nathaniel and I are collaborating at the moment, that actually wants to offer continuous further education possibilities so that people can really connect with the Goetheanum either from their own location or being here in Dornach, and deepen an understanding on Rudolf Steiner's works and what anthroposophy is. And at the moment, we have 3 study programs that we offer through this department. One is the anthroposophy studies on campus, which is here in Dornach. Actually, it's not an introduction into anthroposophy, but it's basic anthroposophy. That means that people who are either interested in beginning to study anthroposophy or who have experienced anthroposophy in different ways in their lives, but might want to come back to the basics, can meet and really delve into the basic works and the basic notions in anthroposophy. And the possibility we are given at the moment is that one can join either for the full program, which is 9 months, 3 trimesters, or one can join the trimesters individually. So we are trying to also become flexible and in that way, so to say, reach out to as many possible diverse experiences there might be out there. So people with families, with professions who may take a semester off at university to come and do some research here. So it's really flexible in that sense, or we try to be as flexible as possible with it. Then we have the online study program, 5 weekends of anthroposophy. And this is a wonderful offer that kind of is a metamorphosis of the program, the online course that came up as a result of the COVID crisis, actually. So we began then our online education programs. And the idea here is that wherever you are in the world, you can come together with like-minded people online to study anthroposophy, basic anthroposophy, as well as artistic and creative contents to do with the study subjects that we propose in this course. And that's, for example, eurythmy or painting and drawing and so on. And this study program, what is beautiful, I think, about it is that you join in different language groups. So you can have your study group in German, your study group in Spanish or Portuguese, French, English. So you connect with people through the language preference. But then you also have common moments in English where everyone comes together regardless of their study language preference, so to say. And now we also have a beautiful new offer, which is this art study year, which is new and is fresh. And we really hope that will bring new life into the campus because, yeah, the artists are so important. And this is a new attempt in collaboration with the section for visual arts to offer, a year-long process for artists, people who are already have decided art to be a main journey in their lives, to come and discover anthroposophy through artistic practice. So actually, it is a course on anthroposophy, but through art. And that's just a beautiful, different direction to meet these common questions that concern all of us here at the Goetheanum. And Nathaniel is teaching in all of these programs, so he can also give you a bit of from the teacher's perspective, what they do. And
I think that, well, I mean, so the English studies program, which, there's a lot of collaborative work, even the text study. It's very seminar style, even though it can be quite big seminar style. I mean, at some terms we have 35 people working on a text together. So we'll try to work in smaller groups or something, but it's really possible to have a lot of conversation. But then I think imagining it is just important to think that there's a lot of art, even in the English studies program. There's sculpture, there's eurythmy, there's painting, there's nature observation. Did I get all of them, Andrea?
theater will have next year as well. Mm-hmm.
Theater will be part of it. And it's not, so I think it's like, it's a really unique program. It's not overwhelming from a time perspective. It's about half days, most days, with some early afternoons classes. But yeah, so anyway, that's like and the people that come are from all over the world and intergenerational, and really, really cool to have these intergenerational learning spaces. And people who have a lot of experience in some field, and they're taking a sabbatical with like an 18 or 19-year-old from Brazil, I mean, just like, And then the art studies year, this is really a unique year. I mean, right now, like if you go to study art, it's very hard to find real studio-oriented art schools where you can actually work with artistic materials most of the time, and a lot of that has to do with recent developments in art, conceptualism and art as more of a conceptual critique than a kind of mastering of materiality or ennoblement of materiality. And so, even in New York, where the studio school for years out of, the New York Expressionist school, they used to do all this studio work, it's like so much, there's just narrow and narrower schools that will focus on doing work. And this is a program where you will have dirt on your hands every day for hours and hours and hours. I mean, it's just like study in the morning, short, and then studio work all day, 5 days a week,
What
And
kind
then
of media? What are the mediums you're working with?
a lot of it's very traditional studio media. There are 3 focuses: architecture, sculpture, and painting and drawing. So you're working with clay, stone, wood, watercolor, graphite, pastels, ink. Those are some that I know you'll work with, but there's probably many more. I'm only one of the teachers. Plaster, possibly wax. And, one of the areas that anthroposophy has been most inspiring is through its contribution to modern art. Yeah. I mean, the program that I was on about before, the MC Richards program, was connected to one person in the United States, who was so inspired by this, and Mary Carolyn. And so anyway, that's a little bit about it. It's a really unique program. It's in the German language, but if you do not speak German, do not be afraid to still inquire if you're interested, because of the studio element, mostly hands-on. I just was talking to the teachers a couple days ago, and there was just undeniable openness in all of them to kind of linguistic learning along the way. But it is a German language course.
But what is wonderful about the next year, actually, in connection to the languages, is that what we will offer is that, so regardless of which one you choose, the anthroposophy studies on campus, mainly focused on anthroposophy, or the art study year, the basic text study is the same. So we will study the same books, the different trimesters, and that means that you can choose whether you study in English or in German. So it's also, this art study year is a wonderful way to come close to the German language through the artistic practice, and without compromising understanding Steiner's texts. I think this is a good, also the wonderful aspect of the collaborative effort of the teachers, who put at the disposal of the students, their linguistic abilities and their international quality.
Yeah, that's an important question. I'm wondering if both of you have come from other parts of the world to live in Switzerland and to be at the Goetheanum. I'm wondering if you could have a sense for a person who might be interested in this. What is it like to live there? What do the days look like, and what is the community like surrounding the Goetheanum, even outside of these programs?
Oh, Dornach. Dornach is surrounded by amazingly beautiful landscape. So for those that need nature or a connection to nature, it's absolutely beautiful and restoring, I would say. Not only because the Goetheanum gardens, actually, and the campus is absolutely beautifully run by our colleagues at the Gärtnerei, the Department for Gardening, but because all surrounding the Dornach and Arlesheim landscape, you have beautiful sites that in a way complement what's happening at the Goetheanum. So it's very, very quiet and very restoring, I would say. And then in terms of the place, it's kind of a little bit like an island in Switzerland. You're not really feeling yourself in Switzerland when you come to the Goetheanum. I mean, you will most likely hear Portuguese, Spanish, English, Georgian, sometimes Russian. You will hear it in the streets, because the people that come here really are from all over the world. And that means that it's a place, I would say, where I often say, if you don't want to take a gap year to travel around the world and you want to come to a place where you can just meet the world in one go, it's Dornach, no? Having said that, you will still experience a quality of individuality. So a lot of people come here for their own individual practice. So this community aspect that maybe you have in other colleges or even youth initiative or youth programs, no, in the world, also inspired by anthroposophies, is not as obvious here as in other places. But then there is the beautiful House of the Youth section, where also this kind of shared living space, this place for really meeting and just being with each other, is hosting so many things. And then what I think is also interesting about the community, the place and the communities that form, is that it kind of fluctuates during the year. So not every month is the same here. For example, we have situations in February. We have the World Agriculture Conference, where 700 to 800, sometimes 900 farmers from all over the world come for a week and stay here, and that changes the landscape completely. And our students are taking part of these experiences. Or the World Teacher Conference, again, 900 teachers from Waldorf schools all over the world. Yeah, this coming and going of people, these transitory elements, means that you're really in movement throughout the year, I would say. And then we have a student residence here. We are very lucky to be able to provide very, very, very affordable accommodation for students who have their own individual room, but in a shared building and shared flats with kitchen and so on, garden. And this is really important for the study year, because maybe in the classroom you are working mainly with the contents and the text, but then everything is carried forward in the social encounter that happens at home, so to say, in the interactions with your peers, and that happens in the student residence. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's a great description, Andre. I also think it's really hard to describe. So it's not, of course, the Goetheanum, it has all of these idiosyncratic dimensions to it that Andre has characterized. And then there's these other amazing things. Like, I was at an event at the Goetheanum with 1,000 people, and it started 1 minute early. You know what I mean? Like, everyone was seated and like quiet, and they just started, and it was a minute early. Like, you don't believe that's possible, but it happens here. And that thing, which I don't want to, I'm not trying to be in any way talking down about these things, but they're just really unusual in other parts of the world, right? I mean, like, also sometimes I've been in like secondhand stores and things are more expensive than they are new.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
also just like a funny thing, it's like, oh, how does this work? But those are just two funny stories. But when I first got here a year and a half ago, I was just making notes because I found it so amusing. And depending on where you're coming from in the world, you can make your own list, and it tells you something about yourself and also something about Switzerland. But generally speaking, the landscape, the care for the buildings, the gardens of the whole country, the organization, there's only 9 million people in Switzerland, which is like the size of New York City, I mean, so it's like, it's a really unique place to visit and work or study. Yeah.
Something that's really shocking sometimes for some of our students, and I know some of the young people that come through the youth section too. For example, we have a lot of people from South America that come, yeah? Like, if you come from if you come from any, let's say, Latin southern country in Europe, but also from Latin America, you have the experience of need at your doorstep all the time. So community need, sort of exchange in public spaces between people all the time, kind of as a primary situation in everyday life. And this is not here. Here, you have everything kind of resolved for you from the moment that you arrive until the moment that you leave. And this can create a kind of almost existential gap in your soul. You know, it's like, but what am I possibly going to do here if there is no need for me to do anything here? And this question, I think, is so wonderful, to when you cannot immediately recognize the need of the other and base your action on that, you have to look finer. What is the question? How can I contribute to a community? What is my initiative? Then it's not an immediate response. It's something that has to be created almost from nothing. And this process, I think, is exciting. And observing yourself in this process can be, actually, educationally speaking, very, very important too. So I try to accompany that a little bit with my students, trying to make them see that even if the need is not apparent immediately, that there is still meaningfulness that they can shape out of being here for the community. And Nathaniel, in fact, is actually doing a 2-week seminar process, 2-week process with them now on community work on campus, talking about service work. And yeah, I'm excited by how they will be transformed by this, actually.
Yeah, that's a great transition, I think. I mean, so there's this question of how to build lives of meaning on the day-to-day and lifetime long scale is I think a really important purpose of anthroposophy and of anthroposophically inspired informed education everywhere, from Waldorf schools to the kind of work with young adults that we are all doing. You know, the kind of classic motto, the quote about Waldorf education, right? It created people, free human beings who are able to impart meaning and purpose and direction to their lives. It's ever more urgent, right? What we are doing in our lives is not given by our ancestry or by our place or you know, even the economy anymore, right? These are things we need to be able to delve deeply into if we're going to have meaningful lives. And I think I certainly see that in students that are coming to Thoreau College. So maybe we could transition into that. You know, anthroposophy, wisdom of the human being, spiritual science, the body of work and the work flowing from the ideas of Rudolf Steiner. Just a very impossible task to say a little bit about what is that, and maybe more concretely, how does that inform in practical ways the type of education, the structure of education, let's say in an arts program or in the other things that you're doing there. Nathaniel, you're being pointed to.
Yeah, well, I think that, you know, this is what a fantastic question. I mean, look, let's take the experience of, you know, just normal experience of adolescence or also young adulthood. And you have this kind of rich, I mean, powerful emergence of an inner life, you know, 14, 16, 17, just, you're really just this interiority that just is flooded with meaning that it's impossible to articulate. And you're very suspicious of, you know, older people who can speak clearly and cleanly, because somehow that means that while they have achieved clarity, they have lost everything that is important about it, you know? And maybe you love poetry better or poems better. And, you know, I think that it's very interesting. You look back to the student movements of the 60s and 70s, and that kind of experience was so important to the young people that they weren't finding it. And still today, I feel like it's a question of how to have a knowledge that has almost a living dimension to it, that you feel like is connected to an intelligence of the heart as well as the mind. And in the you know, the like at the Goetheanum, one thing we haven't mentioned is that there is a first class outside of this you know, these study programs, and it is just 19 very, very involved meditation practices and orientations that are kind of the foundation for all of the work, you know, around the world. And you know, I feel like one of the things, if I were just to make two examples, if you depending on how we orient ourselves, we can see different things. One, that's very clear, you know. But also, it's not only that. It's not only about being open to new thoughts, but it's also about developing capacities. Something that is weak and ephemeral can be strengthened and become strong and very enduring. So I think that the work with anthroposophy, first, it involves a kind of working with opening towards, let's say, the reality of some of those amazing dynamics that are part of the human being that open up in adolescence, which is the soul, so connected to the soul of the human being and the destiny and the future of a person. But you don't only open to it, like you can actually start to practice in relationship to try to understand it better through practice and not just theory or thinking. And then you can develop capacities. And I feel like as a student, and I'm going to talk of myself as a student, not as a teacher, but when I can look back at my biography and I can see that the capacity of certain teachers to be able to turn towards a part of myself that otherwise would be invisible to everyone else was because they were working with anthroposophy. And I mean, not only theory, but practice. And I know that in the faculty here, I have colleagues where I see that happening all the time. They have practice, like with the arts work. I mean, one of the most amazing, kind of developments in art that Rudolf Steiner was connected to was painting out of color. And in the United States, the whole expressivist movement is connected to that, even though I can't go into that now. But like practicing, looking at color in such a way that you start to like allow it to grow and differentiate your own soul, and so that you kind of grow this extra palette of world spirituality, so to say, as an artist, and then what does that mean for a teacher-student relationship? You're working with a painter that like that's their work. So it's like the method and the content are like, I feel like they have something truly unique. I mean, just like absolutely signature in this regard. So I hope those two examples can.
Maybe I can share an experience that I had recently with students from the Netherlands. They were visiting. Actually, they are studying at university pedagogy and social work, and they're doing a minor in Waldorf education as part of their degree. And we also do this where different colleges or study programs from other places can come to the Goetheanum and do an experience with us or an exchange with our students. And they came, and the first day they arrived, I was giving them a tour of the campus, the Goetheanum, and I asked them, okay, if I say anthroposophy to you, then what comes? What is the echo response that you get? It can be anything, don't worry. There's no wrong answer, so to say. And a lot of them, I was very, very impressed to hear that found the word very difficult even to pronounce, yeah? So they said, they refer to, it's a difficult word. It's too many things in one. It's not clear, and it's very difficult to pronounce, they were saying, in their own language, yeah? And then we did some work on that day on Steiner's understanding of the human being. We looked at different artistic expressions of that. So in the Great Hall, we have paintings of the evolution of humankind. There is also the statue of the representative of humanity between the Luciferic and Ahrimanic forces, which are central ideas that you would find in anthroposophy and its literature. And then after this full day of really going deep in these questions, we moved on to the second day where the theme was a school. What is a school for you as teachers or future teachers? What do you think a school should be? Why a place to educate the human being? No? And then their answer to that, it was the same exercise, just an echo. What comes to you when you think of school? The answer was a place of connection. I want a school where I can experience once again a reconnection to myself, to the world, to nature. This was really present in them. And then I quoted to them the first leading thought that Steiner gave in 1924, actually. These were kind of very, very short texts that would describe the nature of anthroposophy, and that were actually meant as study contents for people who would come near anthroposophy. So they are wonderful study texts. And in this first leading thought, he speaks of anthroposophy as a path of not, I'm paraphrasing, yeah, not reconnection, but guiding the spiritual in the human being back to the spiritual in the cosmos. This reuniting, this, yeah, harmoniously reuniting again the parts that apparently are separated for us. And I quoted it to them because I felt like, look how interesting. The first day you didn't know how to even relate to the word anthroposophy, but there is something in our souls that longs for something which is expressed in this leading thought, in this gesture of guiding oneself back home in a conscious way, so to say. And I feel in these moments with the students, I agree with Nathaniel completely. We are students, all of us are studying together. All of us are doing these processes of resignifying, understanding again, going back to the basics, forgetting, and then investigating it again. And it's in these moments, in these conversations with each other, where spaces open for understanding that we're not there before. And for me, a little bit, this is what anthroposophy is. But of course, it's such an amazing contribution to culture and to education that it will never be possible to answer it once. You have to answer it every day. And I think actually one of our responsibilities at the Goetheanum and at the Studies and Further Education Department, the general section, all the sections, is to do that, actually, to constantly give answer and polish those answers, just as the human being has maybe responsibility or can become responsible to polish and give answers out of itself to the world every day, not just once, but every day. So this being in movement with research, conversation, yeah, self-world, others, I think it's just some of the qualities of anthroposophy and maybe how one can start becoming near or coming near to it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yes, these questions of connection and reconnection definitely arise in the students that I talk with, and those are sometimes very concretely connections with other people, with community, with one another, with nature, right? People who feel like they're totally disconnected from the cycles of the seasons or from the plants and the animals, but also this, yeah, the cosmos, right? The spiritual in the cosmos and the spiritual in the human being. It's a deep need that people need a place to seek out. And I'm wondering if you could characterize the people who are coming to do these programs, especially the in-person programs, like the 9-month-long program. They're coming from all over. It sounds like they're coming at different ages as well. What are some of the reasons that they come there? What are the questions there, the stories that they tell, at least, about why they come?
Yeah, so this year, for example, just to give you a picture of who our students are, we had 34 students, then more joined, some left. Aged, the youngest was 17 when the course began. Wow. So that was our youngest ever student, to 74. And everything in between. And they came from 19 different countries at some point. So really, it's like that. You have all kinds of voices, experiences, and reasons for coming here. They're very, very individual. So that's one of the things that we actually try to do before the study program begins, to really become acquainted with the questions and motivations that are guiding them to join this course. That's why we do individual interviews with participants, and actually now I'm doing them for the next course, so it's a really good moment to ask this question. What I observed is that, first of all, it varies from year to year. Sometimes you can see kind of cluster motivations that appear in the groups, and that's also interesting to see that people kind of without knowing each other kind of are seeking each other and to form a community when they arrive here. A lot of the students that will join next year, for example, are telling us already that what they are searching for is a deepening of knowledge. It's almost, it doesn't matter the age, yeah. So we have some applicants that are 19 years old, and they feel that there is something about the way in which they experience knowledge today that is superficial, that doesn't quite cut through to the roots, and that they need something to ground themselves in. And that's something that they need to study towards. So it's not something that they need to basically buy and pocket or read and consume. It's something that they want to shape out of the process of study themselves. So searching for depth, for grounding, maybe you could even say like a new foundational ground. I don't know. It's one of the reasons why people come here. And then you have other varied stories, no? So a lot of the young people that come have disappointing maybe experiences in the academic world. So they go to university and they're excited and they want to explore all these topics, and they go there and they just don't experience at all what they were expecting. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people, young people, when you speak with them, they will say like, oh, it's all about practice, I want to do something in the world. But then when you scratch a little bit more the surface and you really engage in conversation with them, their questions tend to be about knowledge, actually. Even the most practical young people, they're really seeking for answers. They have so many questions, and answers that they themselves can vouch for, that they can say, yes, this I can stand behind, no? And they search for processes where they can shape those, I think. And that's one of the reasons, I think, for coming here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Yeah, I think there's questions of practice that really resonates with what I hear as well. That it's not enough to be active in the world, an activist, right? To be engaged in doing things. If you don't have that deepening that you're talking about, the sense of working out of something that's coming from profound kind of motivations and roots. And I think that creating spaces where that can happen, where young people and people of all ages can seek out those roots is certainly very motivating for me. It's a deep need, I think, in the world. So beautiful. So we're coming up through the end of our hour here. And Nathaniel, I know I'm wondering, as the leader of the youth section, if you could share a few ways that people might be able to connect with the work of the Goetheanum wherever they are. I know that there are events and gatherings, there are youth sections in different countries around the world. But if people hearing this are excited to take the next step, or to engage with groups of people investigating questions and topics like this, how might they do that?
Well, it's a good month. I mean, I was just talking to my colleague about putting our newsletter out. So the youth section, like we were talking about earlier, the school or the College for Contemplative Knowledge, or the School for Spiritual Science, it's really a school for the whole world. So it's all over the world, but then the Goetheanum is the center. And so there are youth section groups all over the world. And sometimes they're affiliated with a country. They'll say youth section in North or continent youth section in North America. Sometimes they're affiliated with like a profession, like next generation biodynamics. And you can go on the website and you can like find some of the groups on our website, which is youthsection.org. But there's like also, if you go there and you go on the newsletter page and you look at our last newsletter, and we have a newsletter coming out like tomorrow, and it's going to have a bunch of events too. If you're interested in getting involved this month or next month, there's just so many things to choose from. So you'll have no problem. And depending on where you are in the world, you might find something close to you. Yeah. But yeah, and then we also have young people who come here and they work at the youth section as volunteers. They stay, we have a house here, which is like the best house besides the Goetheanum, of course, around. And there's like rooms here, and young people stay and they volunteer and they work on projects, sometimes artistic projects, study together. They might even participate in the studies program for like a term or a trimester. So those are some starting points. And this summer, we just had a giant student conference 4 weeks ago. We had 750 high school students here. We don't have another like really big event like that planned this year. We can usually host one of those a year.
Mhm.
But in 2025, if people wanted to come and meet a lot of young people, there'll either be one here, or we're looking at maybe working with a youth section group in Riga, Latvia, to host an international conference. So anyway, those are some options.
Check it out.
Mm.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, here in North America, yeah, there's a North American youth section that does conferences from time to time. And do you happen to know if there are anything coming up there for
Yeah.
North America?
You know, I know that some of the North American team are going to be over here for a week or two, because we're going to meet in the Netherlands for our coworker gathering in 3 weeks. But I know they've got ongoing work at different parts of the world, sometimes on a weekly basis, and sometimes like, seasonally, like every 3 months, they'll have youth little gatherings and projects. But they have an awesome website, and they're easy to get a hold of if you want to reach out to them.
Yeah. Yeah, we're excited to have a couple of our Thoreau College fellows there at the gathering in the Netherlands coming up in a couple of weeks. That's very exciting.
That's right.
For our team.
Yeah.
Tyler and Tom will be there. Advice, just to conclude, advice that I give to my high school students and also the Thoreau College students: if you're out adventuring around the world and you're looking for interesting people doing interesting work, seek out the Waldorf schools, seek out the biodynamic farms. You will receive a warm welcome almost invariably, and you will meet some very interesting people. And that's one way to like travel through the world. And and if you're doing that, make sure you stop at the Goetheanum, so that you stop in Dornach, because you will definitely meet interesting people. Say hi to Andrea and to Nathaniel.
Yes, exactly. Get in touch. Nothing is more wonderful, I think, for us than receiving people from all over the world, and this is always a joy. So happy to meet them.
Thank you
Jake,
both so much for your time. Yep.
great to see you. Thank you for the invitation.
And thank you for your work.
Yeah, thank you for your work. I'm so jazzed and psyched about your whole biography of educational initiative. So thanks for what you do, Jacob.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank
Thank you
you.
for that. Thank you. All right. Have a good day.
Okay.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Mhm.